I will never forget the morning my daughter walked into my house wearing a smile that didn't belong to her. If this story touched your heart or kept you engaged until the very end, please support the channel by liking this video, leaving a comment, and subscribing for more powerful stories of courage, justice, mystery, and unforgettable endings. At first glance, she looked beautiful. She was 38 weeks pregnant, glowing in the soft sunlight pouring through my kitchen windows. She carried a homemade apple pie, smiled politely, and hugged me gently, just like she always did. But something felt wrong. A mother knows. It wasn't her smile. It wasn't the way she spoke. It was her eyes. They looked empty, like someone had quietly stolen every bit of joy she once had. I asked if everything was all right. She nodded too quickly. "I'm fine, Mom." 3 words, 3 lies. For months I had noticed little changes. Chloe stopped answering my calls as often. She canceled family dinners. She rarely laughed anymore. Every time I asked about Julian, she defended him with the same rehearsed answers. "He's just stressed. The hospital keeps him busy." You know how surgeons are. I wanted to believe her. I really did, because every parent wants to believe their child is safe. But deep inside, I knew something terrible was happening. I simply didn't know how terrible. That morning, she placed the pie on my counter and slowly lowered herself into one of the kitchen chairs. She looked exhausted. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. Even sitting down seemed painful. I poured her favorite chamomile tea without saying another word. Sometimes silence allows the truth to find its own way out. She wrapped both hands around the warm cup but never took a sip. Instead, she stared at the steam rising into the air. "I can't sleep anymore," she whispered. I looked at her carefully. "Is the baby keeping you awake?" She hesitated. Then she forced another fake smile. "Something like that." Again, not the truth. I reached across the table and gently covered her hand with mine. She flinched. Not slightly. Violently, as if my touch had frightened her. My heart stopped. "Chloe?" She quickly apologized. "I'm sorry." Her voice shook. "I didn't mean to." I didn't ask another question. Instead, I quietly stood up. "I bought some maternity clothes for you last week," I said casually. "They're upstairs." Her eyes widened. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." She followed me upstairs a few moments later. Inside my bedroom, I handed her a soft blue maternity gown. "The bathroom is yours." She smiled weakly before closing the door. Minutes passed. Then I heard it, not crying. Not exactly. It sounded like someone trying desperately not to cry. I gently knocked. "Sweetheart." A no answer. Another knock. "Chloe." The bathroom door slowly opened. She stood there wearing the hospital-style maternity gown. Her hands trembled as she tried pulling the fabric closed. Then I saw them. Bruises. Dark. Purple. Almost black. Stretching across her ribs. Across her back. Across her waist. For one terrifying second my brain refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. Then everything became painfully clear. Boot marks. Large boot-shaped bruises. Someone hadn't simply hit my daughter. Someone had kicked her. Repeatedly. While she carried my granddaughter. The room became completely silent. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. My knees nearly gave out beneath me. Chloe immediately covered herself. "Mom." Tears poured down her face. "Please don't look." I slowly reached toward her. She instinctively stepped backward. That single movement shattered whatever remained of my heart. My own daughter was afraid of being touched. Not because of me. Because someone had taught her that every hand brings pain. I forced myself to stay calm. Years ago, I learned something important while building my company. Panic helps the person causing the damage. Calm destroys them. I took a slow breath. "Who did this?" She closed her eyes. Silence. I asked again. "Tell me." Her lips trembled. Finally one name escaped. "Julian." The room spun around me. Julian Thorne, the celebrated hospital director, award-winning surgeon, magazine covers, television interviews, medical conferences, charity galas. Everyone in Chicago admired him. Everyone except the woman he came home to. I felt something inside me freeze. Not anger, not yet. Something colder, much colder. "How long?" She couldn't answer. Instead, she broke down completely. "I tried to protect the baby. I tried to make him stop. I did everything he wanted." The words came between desperate sobs. Each sentence hurt more than the last. I wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. This time she allowed me to. We sat together on the bedroom floor. Neither of us spoke for nearly 10 minutes. Finally she whispered something that changed everything. "He said if I leave." Her voice disappeared. I leaned closer. "What did he say?" "He said he'll make sure I don't survive the C-section." I stared at her. She continued. "He owns the hospital. He controls the operating rooms. He said accidents happen every day. If I ever divorce him, I'll never wake up after giving birth." A chill ran through every part of my body. Julian wasn't simply abusing my daughter. He was using his position as a weapon. He believed no one could stop him. He believed he controlled life and death. He believed fear would keep Chloe trapped forever. He had underestimated one thing: me. I stood up slowly, walked to the bedroom window, looked across the lake outside my home. For years, people assumed I had retired. They believed I spent my days gardening, attending charity lunches, and spoiling future grandchildren. They saw an aging widow, a quiet grandmother, a harmless old woman. Julian believed exactly the same thing. He had never asked where my wealth came from, never asked how I built it, never wondered why some of the most powerful people in Washington still answered my phone calls personally. He saw kindness. He mistook it for weakness. That mistake was about to cost him everything. Behind me, Chloe's frightened voice interrupted my thoughts. You can't fight him. He owns everyone. The board loves him. The donors worship him. The politicians protect him. I slowly turned around, walked back toward her, knelt beside my daughter, lifted her chin gently. No, sweetheart. They protect the doctor they think they know. I brushed away her tears. But they have never met the man I know now. She searched my face. You don't understand. He watches everything. He reads my messages. He tracks my phone. He has camera. He always knows. I smiled. Not because anything was funny, because I had finally made my decision. Then we won't use your phone. She looked confused. I walked toward my bedroom closet, reached behind an old locked safe, pressed my thumb against a hidden biometric scanner. A small steel compartment quietly opened. Inside sat a black satellite phone. Unused, invisible, untraceable. A phone I had promised myself never to use again. I picked it up. The screen illuminated. After nearly 5 years of silence, it still worked. I looked back at Chloe. Tomorrow, I said quietly, we're going to the hospital together. She immediately panicked. No. Hell no. He scheduled my final ultrasound himself. Please don't make him angry. I gently held both of her hands. That's exactly where we're going. Her breathing became faster. Mum, he'll destroy us. I squeezed her hands. No. I looked directly into her frightened eyes. He thinks tomorrow belongs to him. I slipped the satellite phone into my handbag. But tomorrow is the day his entire empire begins to fall. The next morning I woke before sunrise. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the bruises covering my daughter's back. I heard the fear in her voice when she whispered that Julian could make sure she never woke up after surgery. Fear has a strange effect on people. Some freeze, some run, and a few become dangerously calm. I belonged to the last group. By 6 o'clock, I was already dressed in a charcoal gray suit I hadn't worn in years. It wasn't expensive because I wanted to impress anyone. It was the suit I wore whenever I expected to negotiate with people who believed they held all the power. Today wasn't going to be a negotiation. It was going to be a reckoning. I heard soft footsteps coming downstairs. Chloe looked exhausted. She barely touched her breakfast. Her eyes kept drifting toward the front door, as if Julian might walk through it at any moment. You don't have to come, she whispered. I looked at her across the table. Yes, I do. She shook her head. If he sees you, he'll know I told you. I hope he does. Her face filled with panic. Mum. He'll punish me later. Those words nearly broke me. Not because she believed them, because experience had taught her they were true. I reached across the table. There won't be a later. She searched my face, trying to decide whether she should believe me. Finally, she nodded. Neither of us spoke during the drive to St. Aurelia Women's Medical Center. Chicago traffic crawled beneath gray skies, while the city's towering buildings reflected the early morning light. To everyone else, it looked like an ordinary Tuesday. For Julian Thorne, it would become the worst day of his life. As we approached the hospital entrance, luxury vehicles lined the valet parking area. Doctors hurried inside carrying coffee cups. Nurses greeted patients with polite smiles. Everything looked perfect. That was exactly how Julian liked it. His empire had always depended on appearances. He believed if the building looked beautiful, no one would question what happened behind closed doors. A valet opened Chloe's door. Congratulations, ma'am, he smiled. Almost time. Chloe forced herself to smile back. Thank you. The moment he walked away, her smile disappeared again. I gently squeezed her arm. Stay close to me. As she nodded. The hospital lobby was magnificent. White marble floors, crystal chandeliers, fresh orchids. A grand piano played softly in the corner. Visitors admired the elegance. I saw something different. I saw a kingdom built on silence. Several employees recognized Julian's wife immediately. Good morning, Mrs. Thorne. Congratulations on the baby. We're excited to meet your little girl. Every greeting made Chloe visibly smaller. She thanked each person politely, hiding the terror that lived behind her smile. I noticed something else. Every security camera, every hallway, every exit. Old habits never disappear. Years ago, while negotiating international business contracts, I learned that every room tells a story if you pay attention. Today, I studied every detail: reception desk, security office, emergency exits, administrative elevators, private executive floor, and nothing escaped my attention. We reached the maternity clinic on the 4th floor. The waiting room overlooked Lake Michigan through enormous glass windows. Soft classical music floated through hidden speakers. Everything was designed to calm nervous mothers. It almost worked. Until Chloe saw Julian's name on the appointment board. Dr. Julian Thorne. A final ultrasound. She stopped walking. Her breathing became shallow. I quietly stepped beside her. You don't have to face him alone. A nurse approached us with a warm smile. Mrs. Thorne. Dr. Thorne requested that he personally perform today's examination. Of course he did. Control. Everything always came back to control. The nurse led us into a private ultrasound suite. The room was spotless, modern, cold, professional. Chloe slowly climbed onto the examination bed. She stared at the ceiling. I could see tears collecting in her eyes. The young ultrasound technician entered carrying a tablet. She seemed nervous. Far more nervous than she should have been. Good morning, she said quietly. We'll begin in just a moment. She avoided looking directly at Chloe, almost as if she already knew something. As she prepared the equipment, I noticed a faint bruise near her own wrist. Interesting. Fear leaves fingerprints on everyone around an abuser. She spread warm gel across Chloe's stomach. The monitor flickered to life. Static filled the screen. Then, there she was, my granddaughter. Tiny fingers, tiny feet. A strong heartbeat echoed through the room. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound filled every corner. For the first time in weeks, Chloe smiled. A real smile. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She's beautiful, she whispered. The technician smiled gently. Very healthy. I placed my hand over Chloe's. She's already stronger than any of us. For a few precious seconds, everything felt normal. Then my handbag vibrated. Once. The satellite phone. I quietly opened the bag beneath the chair. The encrypted screen glowed. One unread message. Satellite connection established. I typed only one sentence. Execute phase 1. Before I even locked the screen, the reply arrived. Standing by. Nobody in the room noticed. The technician remained focused on the scan. Chloe never looked away from the monitor. Good. It needed to stay that way. 5 years earlier, after selling my international medical logistics company, I had quietly transferred most of my fortune into a charitable healthcare foundation. Publicly, everyone believed it funded hospitals. Very few people knew the truth. The foundation also retained powerful legal protections over every facility it financed, including this one. Especially this one. Julian loved giving interviews about St. Aurelia. He often called it my hospital. It never was. He simply occupied the corner office. Ownership is very different from control. Hidden inside hundreds of pages of trust documents was a clause written entirely for situations exactly like this. Domestic violence, medical coercion, patient abuse. If credible evidence ever emerged, every executive privilege could be suspended immediately. Bank accounts, board authority, administrative access, everything. Julian had signed those documents years ago. Like most arrogant men, he never bothered reading the fine print. My satellite phone vibrated again. Emergency board meeting active. Another vibration. Corporate attorneys ready. Another. Federal contacts standing by. I slowly closed my handbag. Everything was moving exactly as planned. Chloe looked toward me. Mom, I'm scared. I smiled softly. I know. What if he comes in? I will. What if he gets angry? He will. What if nobody believes me? I gently brushed a strand of hair away from her face. They won't have to. She looked confused. What do you mean? Before I could answer, the heavy wooden door opened. Expensive Italian shoes stepped onto the polished floor. A familiar voice filled the room. Well, I see my favorite patients are already here. I slowly turned my head. Dr. Julian Thorne stood in the doorway wearing his perfect white coat, a confident smile, and the unmistakable expression of a man who believed he controlled every person in the room. He had absolutely no idea that his empire had already begun collapsing before he walked through that door. Julian stood in the doorway with the confidence of a man who had never been told no. His white medical coat was perfectly pressed. His expensive watch caught the fluorescent lights. Every movement was calm, polished, and rehearsed. To anyone watching, he looked like the perfect doctor, the perfect husband, the perfect future father. Only Chloe and I knew the truth. He was a monster hiding behind a medical license. Good morning, sweetheart, Julian said warmly as he walked toward Chloe. She immediately became tense. I felt her fingers tighten around mine. Julian noticed. His smile didn't disappear. It simply became colder. I've been looking for you, he said. You left home before I woke up. Chloe forced herself to answer. I wanted breakfast with Mom, without telling me. His voice remained gentle, but underneath it, there was a threat. She lowered her eyes. I'm sorry, He leaned down and kissed her forehead. From across the room it looked loving, standing only a few feet away. I saw Chloe trying not to pull away. The ultrasound technician suddenly became very interested in organizing medical supplies. She didn't want to witness what was happening. Julian finally turned toward me. Eleanor. He smiled politely. It's wonderful to see you. I wish the circumstances were better. I agree. I answered calmly. He laughed. I hear Chloe has been worrying you. Pregnancy hormones. You know how emotional things become during the last few weeks. I didn't respond. Instead, I simply watched him. People often become uncomfortable when someone refuses to play their game. Julian was no different. He adjusted his tie. She's been under a lot of stress. Running a hospital isn't easy. I haven't been home as much as I'd like. He wanted me to believe he was simply a busy husband. He wanted Chloe to hear him controlling the conversation. He wanted everyone in the room to believe him. I asked one simple question. Have you been hurting my daughter? Silence. The room froze. Even the ultrasound machine seemed louder. Whoosh, whoosh. Julian blinked once. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. Eleanor. I think you've been watching too many crime dramas. He glanced toward the technician. You see what I deal with. The young woman forced an uncomfortable smile. She didn't answer. Smart girl. Julian stepped closer to me. His voice dropped low enough that only I could hear. Be careful. I'd hate for your imagination to embarrass this family. I smiled. I'd hate for your secrets to destroy it. For the first time, his eyes changed. Only for a second. But I saw it very small, very brief. Then it disappeared. He recovered instantly. I think we're finished here. He looked toward the technician. Please give Mrs. Brooks a few minutes outside. Before she could answer, I remained seated. I'll stay. Julian's smile faded. This is a private examination. So is childbirth. I'm still staying. The room became painfully quiet. Neither of us moved. Finally, Julian looked back at Chloe. Cody, could you tell your mother to give us some privacy? Chloe stared at the ultrasound screen. She didn't speak. He waited. Still nothing. His jaw tightened. Then his phone vibrated. Once, he ignored it. A second time. Again. A third vibration. Now he looked annoyed. He reached into his pocket. His expression changed. Very slightly. He quickly locked the screen. Pretended nothing happened. But I had seen enough. Something unexpected had happened. Good. My handbag vibrated almost immediately afterward. I quietly opened it beneath the chair. Board vote complete. Emergency clause activated. Another message arrived. Corporate financial accounts frozen. Another. Federal audit authorization approved. Everything was happening faster than expected. Julian's phone rang again. This time he answered. What? His voice sounded irritated. Then, confused. No, that's impossible. I'm in the middle of a patient consultation. He listened silently. The color slowly disappeared from his face. I didn't authorize that. Another pause. What do you mean I no longer have authorization? He stepped away from us. His voice became louder. Reconnect me immediately. He ended the call. Forced another smile. My apologies. Minor administrative issue. I nodded. I'm sure it is. Before he could respond, the hospital intercom activated. Attention executive staff. Emergency board meeting now in session. Department heads report immediately to conference room A. Julian frowned. What is this? Nobody answered. His phone rang again. Then again. Then again. 3 calls. Back to back. He rejected every one. The technician quietly finished printing ultrasound images. She handed them to Chloe. This is your daughter. Chloe smiled through tears. Julian barely looked at the picture. His attention remained on his phone. He was beginning to lose control. And he knew it. I looked toward the security camera mounted above the door. Exactly where I expected it to be. Everything inside this room had been recorded. Every word, every expression, every threat. Julian suddenly noticed where I was looking. He followed my eyes. The camera. His smile disappeared. What are you looking at? I answered honestly. Evidence. His heartbeat wasn't the only thing becoming unstable. His confidence was beginning to crack. Just then, a loud commotion echoed from somewhere down the hallway. Running footsteps, raised voices, several security radios speaking at once. Julian walked toward the door. Opened it. A frightened nurse rushed past. He grabbed her arm. What's happening? She looked terrified. I don't know. I heard federal investigators are inside the building. She hurried away. Julian slowly turned back toward us. He looked directly at me. What did you do? I stood up, smoothed my jacket, picked up my handbag. Then I met his eyes. For years, you believed this hospital belonged to you. I took one step closer. You believed money could hide every crime. Another step. You believed powerful friends would protect you forever. Julian's breathing became heavier. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I smiled. I think today, I finally do. Before either of us could speak again, The heavy doors at the end of the hallway slammed open. The unmistakable sound of tactical boots echoed through the maternity wing. Coming closer, one step at a time, straight toward room 4B. The sound of heavy boots echoed through the hallway. Closer, slower, deliberate. Every step seemed to shake the walls of the ultrasound suite. Julian stood perfectly still. For the first time since I had known him, I saw genuine uncertainty in his eyes. Not fear. Not yet. But uncertainty. He looked toward the door, then back at me. "What have you done?" I answered quietly. "I told the truth." He laughed, but it sounded forced. "You honestly think you can destroy me with accusations?" "I built this hospital." "You built a reputation." I corrected. "There's a difference." His jaw tightened. "My lawyers will bury you. They're welcome to try." His phone rang again. He glanced at the screen. It was the chairman of the board. He rejected the call. Immediately another one came. Chief Financial Officer. Rejected. Then another. General Counsel. Rejected. His breathing became noticeably faster. Meanwhile, my satellite phone vibrated inside my handbag. I looked down. P has o comic. Another message appeared. All executive access revoked. A third message followed. Building security transferred to independent authority. Everything was unfolding exactly on schedule. Julian suddenly walked toward Chloe. He forced another gentle smile. "Sweetheart, tell your mother to stop this." Chloe stared at him silently. He stepped closer. "I'm talking to you." She didn't move. Her hand found mine instead. That single action changed everything. Julian's expression darkened. "You've been filling her head with lies." I calmly shook my head. "No, you've done that yourself." He slammed his fist onto the examination counter. The loud bang made Chloe jump. The technician gasped. Julian immediately noticed everyone's reaction. He forced himself to smile again. "I'm sorry. Stress. Long week." Nobody believed him anymore. Not even the technician. She quietly took another step away from him. He noticed that too. People were beginning to choose sides. His side was getting smaller. The hallway outside became louder. Voices. Running footsteps. Security radios. Then the hospital speakers came alive. "Attention all department directors. Please report immediately. This is an emergency executive announcement." Julian frowned. "What emergency?" Nobody answered. His phone rang once more. This time, he answered. Then his voice was sharp. He listened. Then his face lost all color. "No. Who authorized that?" Another pause. "I am the medical director." His voice grew louder. "You can't lock me out of my own accounts." He listened again. "What do you mean my credentials have been suspended?" Silence. His hand slowly lowered the phone. He looked completely stunned. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Finally, he looked directly at me. "You." I nodded once. Yeah, his voice became cold. "You've made a very serious mistake." I smiled gently. "No. You did." He took another step toward me. "You have no idea how many powerful people answer my calls." "I know exactly how many. And today. They're not answering." His eyes narrowed. "You think this is over?" I looked at Chloe. Then back at him. "No. I think it's finally beginning." The door suddenly opened. Not violently. Just enough for a middle-aged man in a navy business suit to step inside. He looked nervous. Very nervous. I recognized him immediately. Richard Hayes. Chairman of St. Aurelia's Board of Directors. "Richard, thank God. Tell these people what's happening." Richard didn't move. Instead, he handed Julian a sealed envelope. "What is this?" Julian asked. Richard took a deep breath. "As of 9:15 this morning. The board voted unanimously." Julian stared at him. "What are you talking about?" Richard swallowed. "You've been placed on immediate administrative leave." Complete silence. Julian laughed. Then laughed harder. "This is ridiculous. I'll overturn it in 10 minutes. Richard slowly shook his head. "You can't. I appointed half the board." "You used to." Richard's voice became steadier. "Not anymore." Julian ripped open the envelope. Inside were several legal documents. He flipped through them quickly. His confidence disappeared page by page. Administrative suspension, frozen executive authority, removal of financial privileges, independent federal audit, emergency ethics investigation. His hands began to shake. "This isn't legal." "It is." "You forged these." "No." "You bribed them." "No." He looked around the room desperately. Beatrice wasn't there to defend him. His lawyers weren't beside him. His executives were nowhere to be found. For the first time, he stood completely alone. Then another figure appeared in the doorway. A woman wearing a dark blue jacket with a federal badge clipped to her belt. Behind her stood several more agents. She looked directly at Julian. "Dr. Julian Thorne." He swallowed. "Yes." She held up a folder. "My name is Special Agent Marcus Vance. I have federal warrants authorizing the seizure of hospital records, financial systems, communication devices, and patient files connected to your office." Julian backed away. "This is harassment." "No," she answered calmly. This is an investigation. You can't arrest me. We'll decide that shortly. His eyes darted toward the hallway, as if calculating whether he could run. The agents noticed. Two stepped behind him immediately, blocking every exit. Agent Vance looked toward Chloe. Are you safe? Chloe hesitated. Her entire body trembled. Julian immediately interrupted. She's emotional. She's under stress. My wife doesn't know what's happening. Agent Vance never looked away from Chloe. I'm asking her, not you. The room became completely silent. Every eye turned toward my daughter. She looked at me. I nodded gently. No words, just reassurance. She slowly lifted trembling hands to the strings holding her hospital gown together. Julian realized what she was about to do. No. Chloe. Don't. She ignored him. With shaking fingers, she loosened the gown. The fabric slipped from her shoulder. The bruises became visible. Dark. Boot-shaped. Several agents froze. The ultrasound technician covered her mouth. Richard Hayes closed his eyes. Agent Vance's expression hardened instantly. She stepped closer. One investigator immediately began documenting the injuries. Julian panicked. Those aren't from me. Or she fell. She's pregnant. It was an accident. Nobody answered him, because no one believed him. Agent Vance looked directly into his eyes. Dr. Julian Thorne, you are now under investigation for felony domestic violence, witness intimidation, medical coercion, financial fraud, and obstruction of justice. Julian's face turned white. He looked at me one last time. Hatred burned in his eyes. You planned this. I met his stare without blinking. No. I answered quietly. You planned it. The day you decided my daughter would never fight back. Outside the room, more agents entered the maternity wing. The walls of Julian's empire were no longer cracking. They were collapsing. And the man who once believed himself untouchable was about to learn that no amount of money, power, or prestige could save him from the truth. The room fell into complete silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the steady rhythm of my granddaughter's heartbeat on the ultrasound monitor seemed louder than before. Whoosh. Whoosh. Julian stared at the bruises on Chloe's body. For the first time in his life, there was no excuse clever enough. No lie believable enough. No amount of charm strong enough. The truth was standing right in front of everyone. Agent Marcus Vance nodded toward one of her investigators. Continue documenting every injury. The investigator carefully photographed each bruise while another officer collected medical evidence. Julian suddenly exploded. This is ridiculous. My wife is mentally unstable. She's making all of this up. Chloe slowly looked at him. Her eyes were no longer filled with fear. They were protected you, she said quietly. Julian froze. I lied to everyone. I lied to my mother, lied to my friends, I even lied to myself. Tears rolled down her face. Julian's expression became desperate. Chloe, please? You know I love you. She slowly shook her head. No, you loved controlling me. You loved watching me become afraid. You never loved me. Every word struck him harder than a punch. Agent Vance stepped beside Chloe. Mrs. Thorne, would you like to make an official statement? Chloe looked toward me. I smiled softly. The decision had to be hers, not mine. She took a long breath, then nodded. Yes. I want everything recorded, Julian shouted. No, you don't understand what you're doing. I'll lose everything, Chloe answered without raising her voice. You should have thought about that before you kicked your pregnant wife. The room became silent again. One of the investigators quietly escorted Chloe into a nearby consultation room where a domestic violence specialist was waiting. As she walked past Julian, she never looked at him. Not once. That hurt him more than anything. Agent Vance turned back toward Julian. We also have warrants for your office. His confidence returned for just a second. You won't find anything. She smiled slightly. We already have. Another federal agent entered carrying several evidence boxes. We've secured the executive office. Financial servers have been imaged. Private hard drives recovered. Several shredded documents were reconstructed. Julian's face lost even more color. Hidden accounting files located. A third. Offshore banking records confirmed. A fourth. Illegal billing database recovered. Richard Hayes, the chairman of the board, stared at Julian in disbelief. My God, what have you done? Julian remained silent, because he finally understood something. This wasn't about one assault. This was about years of crimes. The investigators continued speaking. We found falsified patient invoices, insurance fraud, ghost employees, kickback payments, prescription manipulation, illegal vendor contracts. Each sentence buried him deeper. Then Agent Vance opened another folder. There is one more matter. Julian looked exhausted. What now? As she placed several photographs onto the examination table, images of young nurses, medical residents, administrative staff. Each picture had a written statement attached. My office has received 14 additional complaints, 12 women, 2 male employees. Every one of them describes intimidation, threats, career retaliation, and abuse of authority. Richard closed his eyes. This can't be happening. Agent Vance answered quietly. It already happened. At that exact moment, another familiar voice came from the doorway. Mom, everyone turned. Standing there was Ethan, Chloe's younger brother. He had driven through the night after my phone call. The moment he saw the bruises in the photographs, his face turned pale. He looked at Julian, then back at me. Is it true? I nodded once. Ethan slowly walked toward Julian. Every federal agent instinctively watched him. Instead of attacking, he simply asked one question. Why? Julian couldn't answer. You had everything. My sister loved you. Our family trusted you. So why? Still nothing. Because monsters rarely have good explanations, only excuses. A few minutes later, another investigator entered carrying a cardboard evidence box. We found these inside Dr. Thorne's private safe. Inside were several luxury watches, cash passports, external hard drives, and one thick envelope. Agent Vance opened it. Inside were property transfer documents. Every page carried Chloe's name. Every signature line was blank. I looked carefully. The documents would have transferred ownership of Chloe's inheritance, including my estate, directly into Julian's control. Richard stared in disbelief. He planned this. I nodded. He wasn't waiting for the baby. He was waiting for my daughter to become completely dependent. Agent Vance quietly added the documents to the evidence. Attempted financial coercion. Add it to the charges. Julian lowered his head. His entire empire had been built on control, money, fear, reputation. Now, every one of those things had disappeared. An hour later, Chloe returned after completing her official statement. She looked exhausted, but something was different. For the first time in years, she stood straight. Agent Vance approached her. Mrs. Thorne, a secure medical transport is waiting. You'll be transferred to Mercy General. A different surgical team will deliver your baby. No one connected to Dr. Thorne will be involved. Chloe closed her eyes. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Thank you. She turned toward me. I thought I'd never get out. I wrapped my arms around her carefully. You already have. Behind us, federal agents placed Julian in handcuffs. The metallic click echoed through the room. He looked at Chloe one final time. Please. She didn't answer. He looked at me. The hatred filled his eyes. You destroyed my life. I looked at him calmly. No, you destroyed it yourself. The agents began leading him toward the hallway. Doctors, nurses, patients, everyone stopped to watch. The man who had once walked those halls like a king now walked them in handcuffs. His expensive shoes scraped against the polished floor. His white medical coat no longer represented honor, only disgrace. As the elevator doors slowly closed, Julian looked directly at me one last time. The doors shut. And just like that, the empire he had spent years building disappeared behind a pair of closing steel doors. I looked down at the ultrasound picture still resting in my hands. My granddaughter's tiny face stared back at me. I smiled. This, I whispered softly, is where our future finally begins. 3 months later, the first snowfall of the year covered Chicago in white. For the first time in what felt like forever, my phone wasn't ringing with lawyers, investigators, or emergency meetings. Instead, it rang because my granddaughter wanted to hear her grandmother's voice. Life had finally become quiet again, and after everything we had survived, quiet felt like the greatest gift in the world. Hope was born 2 days after Julian's arrest. She arrived at Mercy General Hospital under the care of an entirely new medical team. The delivery wasn't easy, but it was safe. When I heard her first cry, I closed my eyes and thanked God, not because justice had been served, but because my daughter had survived. When the nurse placed Hope into Chloe's arms, my daughter cried harder than I had ever seen before. They told me I'd never hold her. She whispered through tears. But she's here. I gently kissed Hope's tiny forehead. No one will ever take her away from you. That was a promise. And unlike Julian, I intended to keep every promise I made. The months that followed changed everything. Julian's criminal trial became one of the biggest news stories in the country. Every television network covered it. Every newspaper printed new evidence almost daily. What investigators discovered shocked even seasoned federal agents. Julian hadn't only abused Chloe, he had built an entire criminal organization behind the image of a respected surgeon. Federal prosecutors uncovered millions of dollars in healthcare fraud, illegal billing schemes, money laundering, prescription kickbacks, medical bribery, witness intimidation, corporate corruption. Evidence showed he had threatened nurses who questioned him, destroyed careers of doctors who refused illegal orders, manipulated patient records, accepted illegal payments from pharmaceutical companies. Every week brought another victim forward, another witness, another crime. The man who once believed himself untouchable became the face of one of the largest medical corruption scandals in recent history. Beatrice Thorne also faced justice. She insisted she had known nothing, but investigators discovered years of financial records linking her to Julian's hidden companies, luxury homes, shell corporations, secret bank accounts. Everything was traced. She lost her board positions, her social status, most of her fortune. For years she had proudly protected her son's reputation. Now, she spent every day protecting herself in court. St. Aurelia Women's Medical Center changed forever. The board removed every executive connected to Julian. A completely independent leadership team took over. New policies protected employees from retaliation. Domestic violence screening became mandatory. Anonymous reporting systems were introduced. Victim advocates were available 24 hours a day. The hospital also opened a new family protection center. The board asked if they could name it after me. I smiled, then declined. Instead, I asked them to name it after someone much braver. They named it the Chloe Brooks Family Safety Center. Because survivors deserve to know that healing belongs to them, not to the people who hurt them. As for me, I finally retired for real. No more board meetings, no more billion-dollar negotiations, no more emergency conference calls. Instead, I spent my mornings making pancakes with Hope, reading children's books, teaching her how to plant flowers in the garden, watching Chloe slowly become herself again. Healing wasn't fast. Some nights she still woke from nightmares. Sometimes loud footsteps still made her freeze. Sometimes unexpected phone calls made her hands shake. Trauma doesn't disappear overnight. But little by little, the fear lost its power. Therapy helped, family helped, time helped, and every morning Hope smiled at her mother as if reminding her, "You survived." One evening, that we sat together on the back porch watching the sunset. Hope slept peacefully in Chloe's arms. The lake reflected the orange sky like glass. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, Chloe looked at me.
Mum, I smiled. Yes!
She took a deep breath. When I asked you not to fight him, were you ever tempted to walk away? I looked across the water before answering. Every second. She looked surprised. I thought you were fearless. I laughed softly. No, I was terrified. Then why didn't you stop? I reached over and gently held her hand. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding that someone you love matters more than your fear. A tears filled her eyes. I almost gave up. I know. I thought nobody would believe me. I believed you. She smiled. And that's why I'm still here. Sometimes people ask me what finally destroyed Julian Thorne. Was it the federal investigation, the frozen bank accounts, the board of directors, the evidence, the trial? The answer is much simpler. The day my daughter decided to tell the truth, his empire began to collapse because lies can survive for years, sometimes decades. But truth only needs one brave voice. Today Hope is learning to walk. She laughs every time she sees butterflies. She thinks every flower in my garden belongs to her. Maybe it does. Every time I watch her run through the grass, I remember the day I first heard her heartbeat. Back then, that tiny heartbeat represented survival. Today, it represents freedom. And every single time I hear Chloe laughing beside her daughter, I know one thing for certain. We didn't just survive, we reclaimed our lives. And no one will ever steal them again. Story summary: this story follows a mother's relentless determination to save her pregnant daughter from an abusive husband who hid behind wealth, prestige, and power. After discovering horrifying evidence of domestic violence, she quietly used her experience, resources, and legal authority to expose years of abuse, corruption, and fraud. With courage and patience, she helped bring a dangerous man to justice, while giving her daughter and granddaughter the chance to begin a new life built on safety, healing, and hope. A story lesson: sometimes the strongest people are the ones who appear the quietest. Abusers often hide behind success, reputation, or influence, but no amount of power can erase the truth forever. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, remember that asking for help is never a sign of weakness. One brave decision can change an entire future. Most importantly, family isn't defined by blood alone. It's defined by the people who stand beside you when your world is falling apart. Thank you so much for spending your time with this story. If this story touched your heart or kept you engaged until the very end, please support the channel by liking this video, leaving a comment, and subscribing for more powerful stories of courage, justice, mystery, and unforgettable endings. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next story. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story. The end.